I had been dating Ryan for almost a year, and things had been perfect. Well, mostly perfect. He was kind, attentive, and, as it turned out, the heir to a fortune I could only dream about. I knew his parents were wealthy, but I never expected them to be that wealthy. And when Ryan nervously told me they wanted to invite me over for a family dinner, my stomach twisted in a mix of excitement and anxiety. He had warned me in advance. They're very traditional, very particular about appearances. Just be yourself, he said, his eyes hopeful but tinged with worry. Be myself? I had asked. Ryan, they're billionaires. I don't even own a pair of designer shoes. He laughed, a nervous, awkward chuckle. That's why I like you. Just don't overthink it. Mom and Dad will love you if you're genuine. Genuine. That word would haunt me later. The night of the dinner, I chose my outfit carefully. Simple, plain, nothing that would scream wealth or sophistication. My goal was clear. I wanted to appear modest, naive, even a little helpless. I'd grown up in a middle-class family and had experienced the sting of looking less than in front of people who had more. Tonight, I was going to use that memory to my advantage. Ryan's parents' mansion was more like a private museum than a home. Marble floors gleamed under chandelier lights, and priceless paintings lined the walls. I tried not to stare, at least too obviously, as Ryan guided me to the dining room. "Mom, Dad, this is Sarah," he said nervously, his hand brushing mine. His mother smiled warmly, but with a hint of curiosity. She had the kind of beauty that made you feel instantly judged. "It's lovely to meet you, Sarah," she said, her tone polite but her eyes sharp. His father, on the other hand, gave me a scrutinizing look, as if he were measuring every detail of my existence. Dinner began formally, with polite conversation and Ryan's attempts at humor. I nodded, laughed softly, and asked questions that made me sound naive but endearing. When his father asked what I did for a living, I hesitated slightly, then admitted, "Oh, I just work at a small boutique downtown, nothing too exciting." I could see his eyebrow raise, but I forced a small smile, keeping my voice gentle, humble. His mother leaned in, her interest piqued. "A boutique? That must be charming. Do you have a favorite designer?" I shook my head, shrugging with a small, embarrassed laugh. "Oh, no, I just like simple things, really. I can't afford fancy brands." I watched them closely, savoring the tiny shifts in their expressions, the subtle surprise, the slight judgment. This was the first layer of the game I had planned. They saw me as vulnerable, innocent, harmless. Little did they know, I had a very different side reserved for the right moment. As dessert was served, Ryan whispered, "You're doing fine. Mom's already asking questions about your family." I nodded, keeping my composed, modest demeanor. "I just grew up in a quiet home," I said softly. "We didn't have much, but it was warm." I could tell Ryan's parents were slightly skeptical. I was playing the role perfectly, and yet I could feel the tension building inside me, not because of them, but because of the storm I was preparing for. When I laughed politely at one of Ryan's father's jokes, I noticed a shadow of doubt cross his face. My heart raced with anticipation. They had no idea that the girl they thought was innocent and naive had been planning this reveal for months. Tonight wasn't just a dinner. Tonight was the beginning of a reckoning, and by the end of it, everyone in that room would be shocked. Little did they know, the quiet, unassuming girl sitting across from them had a secret, one that would shatter their perfect image of her completely. And it all started with a single, calculated act. Dinner continued, and I felt every eye in the room on me, not in a friendly way, but in that subtle way wealthy people scrutinize anyone who might not belong. Ryan, bless him, kept glancing nervously at me, like he feared I'd do something wrong. Little did he know, everything I was doing was exactly what I planned. I smiled, laughed politely at his mother's stories about their travels, and nodded attentively when his father lectured about investments and proper life choices. Every comment they made, I reacted in a way that reinforced their assumptions about me: naive, inexperienced, and innocent. At one point, his mother asked, "Sarah, do you enjoy fine dining? This is very different from, say, casual restaurants, isn't it?" I hesitated, looking down at my plate. "Oh, yes, it's very fancy," I said softly. "I usually just eat at small places downtown. I'm not used to all this." I could see the subtle exchange between Ryan's parents. They were assessing me, cataloging my modesty, and thinking they had me figured out. Perfect. Ryan tried to ease the tension with a joke about me being a simple girl from a small town. I chuckled along, playing the part of the humble, grateful girlfriend. My heart pounded with a mix of excitement and nerves. Everything depended on keeping the act flawless until the moment of reveal. After the main course, the conversation turned more personal. His father leaned back, steepling his fingers, and asked, "So, Sarah, what are your plans? Do you see yourself in a long-term career, or perhaps focusing on family life?" I let out a small, nervous laugh. "Oh, I'm not sure. I just go with the flow. I guess I'd love to have a family one day, but I don't have big ambitions." I paused, biting the inside of my cheek to keep a small smile. The shift in their expressions was subtle but noticeable. They were impressed by my humility, yet slightly condescending, believing they were offering me guidance. That's when the first tiny crack appeared. Ryan's mother, clearly trying to be polite, said, "You're very sweet, Sarah. Not many girls our sons date are so grounded." Sweet, grounded. The words made me curl my fingers slightly under the table, hiding my inner thrill. I had successfully pulled them into the story I wanted them to believe, the story of an unassuming, modest girl who had nothing but gratitude for being included in their world. I realized, though, that if I wanted maximum impact, I couldn't just rely on words. Actions mattered too. As they passed around the wine and dessert, I made sure my reactions were perfectly timed, slightly awed, slightly hesitant, subtly respectful. Every glance, every movement, every soft laugh worked to reinforce the image of someone who was harmless, almost invisible in their world of opulence. Ryan, oblivious to the true strategy unfolding, squeezed my hand under the table. "You're doing great," he whispered, a hint of relief in his voice. I smiled, squeezing back, my mind racing with the plan I had meticulously constructed for months. By the time the first dessert plate was cleared, I had them hooked. They believed in my innocence. They believed I was naive and unthreatening. And that belief, that tiny, dangerous bubble of underestimation, was exactly what I needed. I had one final move left before the reveal. One misstep and my whole plan could unravel. But if I played it correctly, by the end of the night I would have them questioning everything they thought they knew about me, about Ryan, and about the world they thought they controlled. As I took a slow sip of water, keeping my gaze demure, I noticed Ryan's father leaning slightly forward, his eyes narrowing in curiosity. He was intrigued, yes, but he had no idea how far this night would go.
They thought they knew me, sweet, naive, harmless, but the moment I revealed the truth, their entire perception of me and everything they believed about our lives would shatter, and it would start with the smallest, most innocent-looking move.
By the time the second dessert arrived, I could feel the room thickening with unspoken judgment. Ryan's parents were dissecting my every gesture, every word. They thought they had me pegged, sweet, naive, and harmless. That made their eventual shock all the sweeter. I leaned slightly forward, my hands folded neatly on my lap, and listened as his father launched into a lecture about real estate investments. "It's important to understand assets," he said, "even if you aren't actively investing yourself. Knowledge is power, even for someone planning a simple life." I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "Oh, assets?" I asked softly, blinking innocently. I think I read about that once, but I don't really understand it." His mother smiled at my response, thinking I was humble, maybe even a little impressionable. "Well, it's never too late to learn," she said encouragingly. "Knowledge can change your life, Sarah." I nodded earnestly, keeping my voice soft and deferential, but inside a fire was burning. They have no idea. They believed this sweet, unsure girl had no strategy, no plan. Little did they know, everything I had done to appear modest and naive had been carefully crafted. Every hesitation, every soft-spoken word, every blush, they were all calculated. Ryan, sitting beside me, looked proud. "See, Mom, Dad? Sarah's just so grounded. She doesn't care about all this fancy stuff. It's refreshing." I smiled, letting him believe he was right. My entire performance hinged on that belief. The more he praised me, the deeper the trap sank into the unsuspecting minds of his parents. Then came the moment I had been waiting for, a casual comment from his father that would test my act. "I assume someone like you has had plenty of experience with wealthy people, Sarah. You seem very comfortable here already." I froze slightly, pretending to struggle with my words. "Oh, no, not at all," I said softly. I've never really been around people with, this much wealth before. It's all very overwhelming." His parents exchanged a look, the kind only billionaires can give, part curiosity, part judgment. I fought back a small smirk behind my poised exterior. Perfect. They're completely convinced. Ryan, clearly oblivious, laughed nervously. "You're doing great, Sarah. Mom and Dad love you." But I wasn't done yet. I let a few subtle comments slip, questions about charity, about travel, about schools, and answered them in the most humble, naive way possible. Each word, each gesture reinforced their perception of me as someone harmless and innocent. Then came the subtle slip, a tiny, controlled reveal of a hint that I might be smarter than they thought. Ryan's father asked about my family background, clearly fishing for more than just small talk. "Oh, we're just ordinary people," I said slowly, feigning embarrassment. "Nothing special, just a small home, modest lives, nothing exciting." He raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Interesting. You seem usually well-spoken for someone with a modest upbringing." I blushed faintly, looking down at my plate. "Oh, I just read a lot. I like to learn about the world. I suppose that's all." Their curiosity deepened, and I could feel the tension rise. They were starting to notice something, but they had no idea what.
Every word, every hesitation, every innocent smile I gave pushed them closer to the edge of suspicion, yet they couldn't pinpoint it. I leaned back slightly, keeping my composure, letting Ryan think he had me all figured out. Inside, I was thrilled. The trap was set. Their assumptions, their judgments, their superiority, they would all crumble when the time came, and the moment of revelation was growing closer, like a storm gathering strength. They thought my innocence was real, my naivety was genuine, but the first crack had already appeared, and once it widened, there would be no turning back. The truth and my plan were about to strike, and it would leave them speechless.
After dessert, the conversation shifted to more personal topics, and I could feel the stakes rising. Ryan's parents were trying to dig deeper, probing into my family, my education, my ambitions. They thought I was naive, modest, even vulnerable, but that belief was exactly what I wanted. His father, swirling his wine glass, asked, "Sarah, how do you usually spend your weekends? Shopping? Social events?" I tilted my head, looking mildly embarrassed. "Oh, I usually just stay home. Sometimes I read, sometimes I walk around the city. I don't do much exciting." His mother, leaning in, asked gently, "But surely there's something you enjoy, something more refined, perhaps?" I let out a small, timid laugh. I've never really been exposed to refined things. I don't have the experience, but I'd love to learn someday. They believed me. They really believed me. And the more they did, the easier it would be to control the narrative in my favor. This was not just dinner. This was a battlefield, and every smile, every soft-spoken word, every delicate gesture was my weapon. Ryan looked at me with pride. "See, Mom, she's really down to earth, not like all those other girls I've dated." I smiled demurely, letting him think he was protecting me. I was letting them underestimate me, because once they were fully comfortable, their arrogance would be my leverage. The next hour passed in a delicate dance of charm and deception. I asked questions that seemed naive, but subtly revealed that I was intelligent, resourceful, and attentive. Questions about art, travel, even business subtly planted seeds of intrigue. Every time Ryan's father tried to assert his superiority, I deflected, nodded, or asked a question that hinted at curiosity but not competence. Then came the moment that would start building my leverage. Ryan's mother mentioned a charity they were involved in, one with connections to high-profile donors. "It's complicated," she said, "but it helps people who really need it. You'd find it rewarding." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough to sound humble. "That sounds amazing. I've always wanted to help people like that, but I've never had the opportunity." Her eyes softened. "That's very sweet of you, Sarah. Most girls your age wouldn't care about such things." Inside, I was silently celebrating. They were completely convinced that I was harmless, humble, and even dependent. And dependence, I knew, created openings. It made them feel powerful, and power blinded them to the reality of my plan. Ryan, completely oblivious, whispered, "You're amazing. They're eating out of your hand." I nodded with a modest smile. "I'm just grateful to be here." But the real game was just beginning.
I had planted the idea that I was inexperienced, that I lacked resources, and that I relied on their generosity, even if just in perception. That illusion would make the eventual reveal all the more devastating. As the evening drew toward coffee and after-dinner treats, I noticed subtle signs that my act was working. Ryan's father relaxed, thinking he was mentoring a naive young woman. His mother smiled warmly, clearly impressed by my humility. And Ryan, well, he had no idea that his beloved girlfriend, the sweet girl he had introduced to his world, was quietly orchestrating the biggest surprise of their lives. I sipped my tea, keeping my eyes downcast, my hands folded gracefully, and let them feel superior. Every subtle nod, every small laugh, every humble answer pushed them further into the trap. And then, as if on cue, Ryan excused himself to take a call, leaving me alone with his parents for a brief, tense moment. The air seemed heavier. I felt it, the perfect opportunity. This was the moment when the naive act had to remain flawless, because the closer we got to the reveal, the higher the stakes became. One wrong move, one hint of arrogance, and my plan could unravel. But if I played it perfectly, by the end of this night, everyone would realize that the girl they thought they understood was nothing like they imagined.
Ryan was gone for what felt like an eternity, leaving me alone with his parents. The room felt smaller, charged with unspoken scrutiny. I could see the gears turning in their minds. They were trying to piece together the real me. But what they didn't know was that I had already decided how this puzzle would fit, and they would never see it coming. His father leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine, and said, "Sarah, it's rare to meet someone who seems entirely genuine. Most people we meet have agendas. You seem different." I smiled softly, keeping my hands clasped, my posture demure. "Oh, I just try to be honest," I murmured. "I've learned that pretending only makes life heavier." His mother tilted her head, studying me like a detective analyzing a suspect. "You're very self-aware. Most girls wouldn't know their own strengths or weaknesses. You seem careful, but there's something else there, something you're hiding." My heart raced, but I didn't falter. I allowed a small, nervous laugh. "Oh, I don't think I'm hiding anything. Maybe just shy." They nodded, unconvinced. Their skepticism was growing, but so was their intrigue. Every time they doubted me, I pushed the narrative further, letting just enough naivete slip to keep them off balance. I was a delicate dance, innocent enough to appear harmless, smart enough to hint at hidden depth. Then came the comment that would ignite the first real crack in their assumptions. Ryan's father, leaning forward slightly, said, "You're smarter than you let on. There's experience behind your words. Most people would never dare say some of the things you just said in front of someone like me." I kept my gaze lowered, biting my lip in mock embarrassment. "Oh, I just listen more than I talk. I learn from people." It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the shift was enough. The mask was starting to slip, but only just. Their curiosity deepened, their assumptions began to crumble, and I felt the thrill of knowing I was leading them exactly where I wanted. Ryan walked back in, and I quickly readjusted my expression to full innocence.
"Sorry, I didn't realize how long the call would take," he said, squeezing my hand nervously. I smiled softly at him, nodding, but inside I was counting down the moments until the reveal. Every detail of this dinner had been orchestrated to make this moment perfect. Their underestimation of me was their fatal flaw. "Sarah," his mother said, her voice gentler now, "we've enjoyed having you here. You've surprised us, in a good way, but we can't quite place it." I let out a small sigh, a soft smile curling my lips. "I suppose I'm not who you expected, but I hope I haven't disappointed you." His father's eyes narrowed slightly, a faint smirk appearing on his lips. He was intrigued now, not condescending. He didn't know it yet, but I had them right where I wanted them, hooked on my story, unsure if they understood the real me. The final part of the plan required only one more move, a subtle reveal that hinted at the truth without giving it all away. As Ryan poured more coffee, I allowed a slip of confidence to shine through in a single, carefully crafted statement. "I sometimes wonder if people only see what they want to see," I said softly, glancing at both of them. "Perhaps they think they know someone, but the truth is often very different, and the truth, well, it can be shocking." The pause was perfect. I watched their reactions, her mother's raised eyebrows, his father's narrowed gaze. Intrigue, suspicion, and tension filled the air. They were beginning to sense that I wasn't as simple as I appeared. And that was exactly the point. I had laid the groundwork. I had been humble, naive, sweet, and almost powerless in their eyes. But the real Sarah, the one they hadn't met yet, was waiting for the right moment to completely shatter their assumptions. They were starting to sense it. The girl they thought they understood was not who she seemed, and once the truth came out, it wouldn't just surprise them, it would completely upend everything they believed about me and about Ryan.
The moment had arrived. Ryan had excused himself to take another call, leaving me alone with his parents again. I could feel the air around the table grow heavier, charged with anticipation. Their skepticism and curiosity had reached a boiling point. They no longer saw me as merely naive. They were starting to sense there was more. I let a small, calm smile play on my lips. "You know," I said softly, my voice measured, "sometimes the world underestimates people because they only see the surface, but beneath, things can be very different." His father raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Different how?" I looked down at my hands for a moment, feigning humility. Then slowly I straightened my posture. "Let me show you something," I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out a sleek tablet. I handed it to his father. "What's this?" he asked, suspicious. I pressed a few buttons, and the screen lit up with documents, photos, and certificates. "I've been working on some projects," I said softly. "Projects that, well, they've been very successful, and I've done it all independently." His eyes widened as he scrolled through contracts, patents, and proof of business ventures that were worth millions, ventures he never imagined I could have been behind. This can't be," he murmured. I smiled, keeping my demeanor calm and polite, almost innocent. I didn't mention it because, well, it never seemed necessary. I prefer to work quietly, let results speak for themselves. But it seems I underestimated your assumptions about me. His mother gasped, covering her mouth. "Sarah, you've done all this? On your own?" I nodded gently. "Yes, I'm not just the naive girl you thought you knew. I've managed investments, built companies, even partnered with people you probably know by reputation."
The room went silent. The polite dinner atmosphere, the subtle judgments, they all shattered instantly. I could see their minds racing, trying to reconcile the sweet, modest girl they thought I was with the powerful, capable woman now standing before them. Ryan walked back in at that exact moment, and I looked up at him, smiling. "Ryan, meet the real Sarah." He froze, his jaw slightly slack. "Wait, what?" he whispered. I gestured toward the tablet. I didn't want to overwhelm anyone during dinner, but I think it's time everyone understood I am not who they assumed I was. His father, still holding the tablet, was pale but composed. I don't understand. All this time we thought you were naive," I said softly, letting the word hang in the air like a curtain dropping. "Sweet, inexperienced, harmless. That's the image I let you see. But the truth is very different." His mother shook her head in disbelief. "But why? Why pretend?" I met her gaze calmly. "Because I wanted to see how you truly judge people, to see if you respect someone for who they are or just for the wealth and status they might bring. And now you know." They sat in stunned silence, their expressions a mix of shock, admiration, and something else. Regret, perhaps, for underestimating me so completely. I closed the tablet and smiled faintly. "I hope this dinner has been enlightening." Ryan blinked, finally understanding the scale of what had just happened. "Sarah, wow, I had no idea." I reached for his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "And that's the point, Ryan. Sometimes appearances are deceptive, and tonight the truth had to be revealed. They had judged me, underestimated me, and assumed I was powerless, but the girl they thought they knew had turned the tables completely, and the aftermath would leave everyone reeling."
The room was silent, thick with disbelief. Ryan's parents stared at me, trying to process everything they had just seen. Their polite, judgmental smiles from earlier had vanished, replaced by confusion, awe, and a flicker of fear. For a moment, I allowed myself to enjoy the satisfaction of seeing their world tilt. His father was the first to speak, his voice a mixture of incredulity and respect. I underestimated you completely, Sarah. I didn't realize." He trailed off, clearly struggling to find the right words. I smiled faintly, keeping my tone soft but steady. "It's easy to misjudge people based on appearances. I wanted to see if you'd truly respect someone for their abilities or just assume they were ordinary." His mother, still shaking her head, added, "I can't believe this. You've built all this? Managed all of this? Quietly?" "Yes," I replied simply. "I've always preferred to let my work speak for itself. Tonight was just to show the truth behind the facade you assumed I was living behind." Ryan was still staring at me, eyes wide. "Sarah, all this time? I had no idea. Wow, I don't even know what to say." I reached for his hand and squeezed it gently. "You don't need to say anything, Ryan. I wanted you to see the real me, too, just like everyone else here." For a few moments, the room was suspended in stunned silence. Then, finally, his father exhaled slowly and, with a trace of a smile, said, "Well, I suppose I should have known that someone who could hold their own in your presence, Ryan, would have substance beyond what meets the eye." His mother laughed softly, still shaking her head. "Sarah, you've completely turned our assumptions upside down.
I never thought I'd be so humbled in my own home." I nodded, keeping my expression calm. It's not about humility, it's about understanding people beyond the surface. You judged me before knowing the truth. Tonight, the truth is undeniable. Ryan finally smiled, a mixture of pride and amazement in his eyes. "You really planned all this, didn't you?" I shrugged innocently, but my smile gave away a hint of triumph. I've always been careful with how people perceive me. Tonight was just the right time. There was a pause, then his father leaned forward, tapping the tablet on the table. "I have to admit, this changes everything. I misjudged you, Sarah, and that's something I won't make the mistake of doing again." His mother nodded, reaching out to place a hand over mine. "You've taught us a very important lesson tonight. Never assume you know someone's story. You're remarkable." I smiled, feeling the weight of months of planning finally lift. The act of pretending, the careful navigation of every word and gesture, the deliberate, naive girl facade, it had all led to this moment. The people who had underestimated me now saw my power, my intelligence, and my autonomy. Ryan exhaled, still looking stunned but deeply impressed. "You don't know how I got so lucky to have you in my life." I squeezed his hand again, my eyes soft but confident. Tonight was more than just a dinner. It was about truth, respect, and understanding, and I think we all learned something in our own ways. As we left the dining room, I felt a quiet sense of victory. It wasn't about wealth or status, it was about control, perception, and proving that underestimation could be the most powerful tool of all. And as I walked past Ryan's parents, I could see their expressions: awe, regret, admiration, and a subtle realization that the girl they thought they knew was far more formidable than anyone could have imagined. They had judged me, assumed I was powerless, and underestimated me at every turn. But tonight, I proved that appearances are deceptive, and sometimes the quietest, most humble person in the room holds the most power and the ability to shock the world around them.